Okay, let's set up Easysolar 3000 GX very quickly. So you've got to power it up. I'll just put some battery leads on and you get a data cable and connect it up to your network and turn it on. Make sure all the terminals are obviously safe, don't touch them. And then I'm going to share my screen and show you how to set this up. Right, so what you'll see is when you've turned it on and you go to your network, if your laptop or PC is connected to the same network, you should see the Easysolar icon come up that shows that it's online, and you can double click on that. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. I need to go to networks. There it is there, it shifted on me. Okay, so now you're into the GX device. That's the remote console of the GX device, and you can set that up. The first thing I want to do though is I want to actually set it up as if we're not right next to the system. So we're going to do it remotely through the VRM portal. So you need to go onto VRM, vrm.victronenergy.com and sign up. First thing you should do is sign up if you haven't already got an account. And then we want to look at the VRM portal ID. So you're going to see that portal ID on a sticker on the side of the GX device or the side of the actual inverter. You'll see VRM portal ID, and you can also see it by going into the menu here, settings, VRM online portal, and you'll see that is the number there that you're going to enter in. So knowing that it's online, that's great. We're now going to go and add a device. So we click on add installation and it will show up here, Easysolar II GX. That's the one we want to work with. So we click on that. And very simply, we just want to type in that portal ID. So if I go back to here, it's C0619AB, C0619AB, what's the rest of it? The rest of it is 09DC1. 09DC1. Okay, so we're going to go. I'm just going to set this up as test. What I'll do is I'll change that installation name to the actual serial number or the customer name later on. Request access. There we go. Success. The installation is added to your account, and now we have access to it online. So I can shut this remote console down here, and now I can go to the remote console through the VRM portal. It does take a bit more time than doing it directly because obviously you're going right through the internet, not just through the local area network, but it's always worthwhile doing. It's always worthwhile to do it remotely because you get used to doing it remotely. That's the worst case scenario. Okay, so what we're going to go through here is general, go through all the settings and just set the whole thing up. So we're going to enable remote support. Check there's nothing else to enable there. Go back down to firmware, and we're going to go online updates. Press to check, and it's checking. It says we have an update available, so we're going to go update to 2.7. So if I click that, it's now going to download and install that. It will automatically reboot the GX device once it's installed it. So I'm going to get booted off, and then I'll have to wait for a few moments while it reconnects, installs the firmware, reconnects. In the meantime, I just keep whizzing through here, go down, set up the usual stuff. It's pretty straightforward. Remote console. So we know it's enabled on VRM because that's what we're using at the moment. Here we go, firmware installed, rebooting. So it's kicking me out now. I'll need to reconnect, but obviously it'll take a wee while for that to reboot. And if you look up here, you've got on the VRM portal itself, you've got when it was last updated. So while it's rebooting, that will change. But eventually, once it's back online, this last updated will actually go to a little real-time icon, and it will say that it is now connected in real time to the VRM portal. And these readings here are then displayed in real time. Now, real time actually means a delay of maybe 10 to 20 seconds, sometimes 30 seconds. Depending how busy the site is, you'll find that one will update, then the other one will update, and the other one will update. You know, it just keeps going around in a circle while it's updating. At the moment, we've got no historical data to show because we've only just set the system up online. So I'm going to try into the remote console again. No harm in trying. See if it's connected online yet. See if it's rebooted. There it is. We're back. So now I go to settings and pick up where I left off. So remote console will be it. I think we were in there. Now, if you have trouble, you can getting into the remote console, you can disable the password check. Sometimes that's just something that you have to do, or you might have to get the people on site to do it, but it's always good to just click that. System setup. So what is your AC1 input in an off-grid system, which we're going to set this up as an off-grid system? It's a generator. AC2 input, well, that's not actually available. We don't have two AC inputs on this inverter. If it was a Quattro, we would have two AC inputs. You could have one as the grid, one as a generator, or you could have both as generators and have two generator inlets, one for a big generator that you normally use, and then maybe one set up for a 10 amp generator that you might hire if the big one dies. Battery monitor, I leave that on automatic. If there is no Freedom 1 battery or lithium battery connected with a BMS, then it will revert back to the Multi-Plus 2 as the battery monitor. And we are going to set this up as a Freedom 1 connected battery. Even though we don't actually have a Freedom 1 on site or with us at the moment, we can still connect it, set it up to handle Freedom 1. DVCC, don't worry about that at the moment. When you connect a battery with a BMS, it will automatically set the DVC settings for you, and it will force them on or off. Display and language, pretty much standard. Don't have to worry about that. VRM online portal, what's going on there? Now, I normally will set this up at 1 minute intervals for the data so that when we're doing fault finding, we can get a really good fine granularity on the data, which really helps. Now, also set up two-way communication, which is important for things like firmware updates remotely, etc. Now, often, if we think we might be in a bit of a dodgy internet area, I will reboot if there's no contact with the VRM portal. That will just reboot the GX device. It won't reboot the whole system, just the GX device. The whole system will keep running fine. But what it means is if there is some kind of dodgy connection, it'll reboot it and it will automatically then try and reconnect to the internet. And I've just got that set as default, 1 hour every hour. If it's not connected, it'll reboot. ESS is for on-grid systems, and you need an ESS Assistant loaded into the inverter for this to be able to see and then control the inverter for an on-grid situation. Energy meters, in this particular case, we're not using energy meters, but if we were, one, it would show up there if it was connected, and then you could assign that energy meter to be grid or another PV inverter. PV inverters, so if we've got, say, a Fronius PV inverter attached to the same system on the same network, we would then scan that network and it would come up as we've scanned. It will go through and try and find any PV inverters, and those PV inverters will then show up in the list, and you can then assign them where they are physically. Are they on the AC input? Are they on the AC output? Line 1, line 2, line 3, if you've got a 3-phase system. It will take some time to scan, so you could come back to that if you want to. Wireless AC sensors not used. Modbus TCP devices not used. Ethernet, you can just basically see, are we connected? Yes, we're using Ethernet. That's cool. And same with Wi-Fi. You can go into Wi-Fi networks. It'll tell you what access points are available. Give it some time to scan for that. Here we go. We've got 3 Wi-Fi networks available. We can connect any one of those by entering the password in there and pushing enter, and it will connect to them. Now, you need the signal strength on the Wi-Fi network. I'm just going to enter that and it'll fail, but you need the signal strength to be greater than 45%. So that's very, very dodgy. At the top of the GX, the Easysolar GX, there is a little antenna port, and you can put the antenna in there and that will boost the strength of the Wi-Fi radio in the unit. Or you can actually use a USB Wi-Fi radio. Generally, I prefer to try and get it done through Ethernet because that's more reliable. But if it's really dodgy, you can even connect the Wi-Fi to a customer's hotspot on their phone, and you know, if they have any problems, they can connect their hotspot on. We're not sorry, go back here. We're not using GSM modems. We're not using GPS. We're not using tank sensors or pumps. But services, we are going to be connecting to a BMS. So we need to check that that's set up CAN bus BMS 500. And then whenever a CAN bus BMS is connected, it will automatically start using that battery and communicating to it. So that is now the GX device set up. Okay, so we can escape back to the normal screen if we want to. Doesn't really matter because there's no screen really on the actual GX device on this. It's a micro GX. So we'll close out of that. And now we're going to go into the device list on, and you will see the 3 devices that are built into the Easysolar. You've got a gateway, which is your GX device. You've got, which we've just programmed, by the way, we've just programmed that gateway. You've got a VE bus system, which is actually the inverter. And that you'll see here, it's a multi-plus 248 3000. And it shows you a few details on that. And we also have a solar charge controller. And that's the MPPT 25070. And it tells you the firmware version on that as well. So now what I'm going to do is, while we're in device list, we're going to go to firmware update. So the next step is do a firmware update on all the gear. So it's now scanning for the devices that are attached to the GX device and finding out what firmware version they are. Okay, so the Smart Solar appears to be up to date already. That's great, but we've got a more recent version of our firmware available for the Multi Plus, so we're going to update that. Now, when you're doing this remotely, make sure that you actually read all of these steps and understand them, because this actually will wipe the firmware and wipe the configuration settings. So it's best to do it first, and also make sure that your PV inverters are turned off, because if you're doing this after the install's running and you just want to update the firmware, it will come back live but with no assistant for being able to control a PV inverter. And if it's a Fronius inverter or Enphase or whatever you've got attached to the AC output, that will not be controlled by frequency shift for as long as it takes you to upload the new program. So it's possible that it will overcharge the battery or cause a shutdown on the site. So you've got to understand that, and you will turn the PV inverter off or ask the customer to turn it off. Continue. And the last thing is, it's the second to last thing, it's not powered by the inverter. So the GX device in most situations is going to be powered directly from the battery. I understand that. I will continue. There's no other V-bus digital multi-controls. So that's normally for boats and systems like that. There's a whole lot of multi-controls that you can add to the system, but in most cases, you're not going to have those there. So we've got one connected to this. Now, this is it. I understand the risks. I may need to go to site. So it might be necessary to send someone to site to restore the system. So you've always got to be prepared to jump in your truck and get to site, or send someone to site if this thing doesn't come back online. because understanding it's going to start the firmware update, and then it's going to shut the power down, which will shut the internet connection down, which means you have no visibility for about 3 to 5 minutes, unless your internet connection is on a UPS and you're using, well, you're connected to it continuously, then that's great. In this situation, our internet connection is not powered by the inverter, it's powered by the workshop. So we're setting this up in our workshop. So we'll confirm that, and here we go. We're now updating firmware. So it's going to probably stop progress at around the sort of 40%, maybe 50% mark. If you're on a internet connection that's powered by the inverter, and if you're not, you'll see it just come right through. What it's going to do next is it's going to download a file which you will need to open. So you, from here on out, you need to go to Victron Energy, go to their software page, just Google or DuckDuck, whatever, Victron software, and get past the ads and you'll see software, Victron Energy. So you need to download Victron Connect for Windows or whatever you've got, but download it for Windows. So that's Victron Connect. You need that software for the next steps. And download the VE configuration tools. That is 3 pieces of software, 4 pieces, 3 that you might use. VE Configure 3 is the most common one you're going to use. VE Bus Quick Configure, that's if you're going to do parallel inverters, and then you've also got VE Bus System Configure if you've got really large systems like more than 3 inverters, so 6 inverters or more. So download those tools, install them. Now we'll come back to this. It's now writing the firmware to the inverter. The inverter is now switched off, so the AC output's off. And while we're at it, what we'll do for the Freedom 1 batteries is you can go Victron and then go Freedom. Oh, Freedom 1, and it will come up here, Victron Energy, Freedom 1. Click on that and it tells you how to set up each device, what the voltage settings are, etc. for the Freedom 1s. So we're going to just scroll down till we see something that looks like important information. So we've got MPPTs, there we go, VE configure 3 settings, multi-plus or quattro devices must be correctly configured for operation with Freedom 1. So here are our voltage settings: low voltage shutdown, restart, pre-alarm, and we're now going to go into the system. So we'll come back to the firmware update process, which is still doing. And it will download a file from the inverter that we will open and save. And then we'll work on that file and upload it back to the inverter. Shouldn't take too long. It's taking some time. Here we go. Must have heard me. System has been updated, it's now switched off. Technically, it may actually be switched on. So I'm going to go into this. This is going to open it with that software that we just looked at. And what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to close it and it'll ask you to save it. It's just kind of like saving a backup. Then we'll go back and we'll download it from the actual inverter. You can work on this file, but it's better to download it from the inverter because that's the standard way. So I'll show you the standard way of accessing that. Converting, so okay, and I'm going to exit that. And yes, I'm going to save it. I'll save it in my downloads folder. It doesn't really matter. Test system. Saved. Right. Now I'm going to go back to device list over here. And now we go to remote VE configure. Now this is for configuring the inverter part of the system. We have 3 devices inside the Easysolar, the GX device, which we've already configured, the inverter, which we're about to configure now. You see there it says configurable service. We've got multi plus 2, that's the inverter. So we'll download the software from that. The other thing we need to configure is the charge controller. And to configure the charge controller, just so we can get ahead of ourselves, we're going to use Victron Connect. It comes up there, Victron Connect. Now, so I'm just starting that Victron Connect up now, but we've downloaded the file. It's come here into your downloads folder. You just click on it and it will open in VE Configure 3, provided you've got that software already loaded. And then we're going to go through the VE Configure software according to the settings here, but also the rest of the VE Configure software. So I'll leave those settings up, go back to VE Configure. So the first thing is the system is definitely 50 Hertz if we're in New Zealand, so you want to leave it at 50 Hertz. The AC input current is basically your generator current. So I normally just set that at 10 amps. 10 amps, just because that's pretty standard if you're going to put a little 10 amp generator on. Now, overruled by remote basically means if that's ticked, then you can actually overrule this. You can change this 10 amp rating to anything you like using the remote console. And I'll show you how to do that later. Dynamic current limiter basically means that the inverter will try and limit the current and bring it up nice and slow, be really gentle on the generator. External current sensor connected, we don't really need that unless you're using energy meter and you're connected to the grid. So that's unticked, and we enable the battery monitor and we say what's the battery capacity in amp hours. Usually a lithium, you just convert kilowatt hours divided by 50 volts equals amp hours. So a 15 kilowatt hour battery will be 300 amp hours. So we could put, say, 200 amp hours in there. This is actually not going to be used when the lithium battery is connected. But if the lithium battery happens to, if someone trips over the data cable or there's a problem with the comms, it will then revert back to this inverter to manage the battery itself. So normally I would put in a lower amp hour rating than what the battery actually is. Or if I know what the battery is, put it bang on what battery size is. The reason you do it lower is so that if there is a problem, the customer's going to see, oh, we've used a lot more of the battery today than what we normally have, and they might ring the installer and the installer will find out that there's a problem with the comms cable. 95, when the bulk is finished, it's pretty much 95% charged or even greater with lithium. Charge efficiency 1, that's fine. We go to grid, the grid tab here. We don't have a grid, so we're not going to set a grid code. Just leave it as none. Accept a wide range of frequency, that's good. And also low voltage and high voltage, you want that as wide as possible to accept whatever the generator throws at it. UPS function basically matches the inverter really close to the generator waveform, and as soon as the generator starts wavering or shutting down, looking like it's going to shut down, the inverter drops it off and takes over. So if you've got a dodgy generator, it's best to untick the UPS function. That means they might get a couple of flickering lights as the generator disconnects. But if you have a UPS function on there, it's going to kick out any dirty generator, and it'll be some generators won't even connect. The inverter itself, how many volts is it putting out? You can legally put that up to 245, or actually 246 in New Zealand. If you've got a long run between the inverter and the house, maybe you want to put that to 240, so they've got good voltage at the house. But you can change that as you see fit. Now here we come to voltages. So we've got low shutdown here. See there in the background, we've got shutdown 47. So we'll put that in there, 47. And we'll just copy these, low shutdown restart, 52.5. And pre-alarm will be 51.5. And we don't necessarily need to shut down on state of charge unless you want to. These voltage settings are pretty much the lowest that the battery can handle. Power assist, again, if the generator is, say, 10 amps and you have a load of 20 amps, the inverter will boost the generator. But if you untick that, the generator it will try and take the whole lot from the generator, and it will probably kick the generator out or overload it. Charger. So our battery type is going to be lithium. Tick lithium batteries here. Now I've actually got it stored. You can go normal lithium iron phosphate battery, but I've got Freedom 1 settings stored. You can set those Freedom 1s if you want to, or you can just do it manually each time. So it's changed the voltages there. And if we go into this, we see, here we go, the charger page. We've got 55.8, 55.8, 52, lithium batteries tick, enable charger, absorption time. So if we go back now to a program, yep, we're all good. It's all the right settings. So virtual switch, we're going to turn the virtual switch off. Do not use virtual switch. That then enables us to load assistance. If you have a virtual switch running, it's an old throwback, but some of them still use it, but I never use virtual switch. Always use assistance. So I'm going to add an assistant. I'm going to go down and add PV inverter support because we're going to have a PV inverter on here just because we can. Okay, so now I've added the assistant. Now I need to just make sure that that assistant is set up right. VE bus BMS. No, we don't have a VE bus BMS. That's for Victron batteries only. Now the frequencies of the inverter, we leave those as standard. That will frequency shift to start ramping the inverter back. And the inverter, we want to tell it what size inverter it's got. So we might have a 3,000 watt inverter. And how many panels we got on there. We might go to 4,500 if we're really over PVing it. And that's programmed. Now I'm going to add another assistant called a relay assistant. Programmable relay. Start that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the AC2 output, because there's two AC outputs. One's got a relay. I'll tell it to turn on when the batteries are at a state of charge that is higher than 98%. And that could be used to run a hot water cylinder element. And then I'm going to add another assistant in there, relay assistant again. And I'm going to this time do exactly the same thing, except I'm going to tell it to turn off, set the relay off, when the state of charge is below 96%. You can arbitrarily set whatever you think, whatever you see fit for those settings. Generally, you want to keep them pretty high because you don't want the hot water cylinder sucking the battery dry at the end of the day, because you want them to last through the night. There we go. So we've got relay on and off and PV inverter support. So we're all set up there. So now what we can do is we can just go exit out of there. You don't have to file save as, you just exit and it says, would you like to save the change settings to the remote file? Yes, easy. Now we go back into the VRM portal and we go upload and we make sure that we're looking for the right file. And you'll notice that the time here now is 12:30 p.m. So we look at the latest file and downloads, which is where it would have saved, and its latest modification time is 12:30 p.m. So that's the file we're working with. So double click that and it's going to upload that file. Now, when it uploads, it's actually going to turn the power off and back on again because it's uploading assistants. Every time you change an assistant on the system, it will turn the power off and back on again. There are some other settings that it's going to do that as well. So you need to be aware that you're going to lose contact if the internet router is powered by the inverter. And the customer's going to lose power, obviously, when you're doing uploads. So then it will come back online. And when the internet router comes back online and the system connects to the VRM portal again, this will say it's completed and you can carry on. Resetting VE bus products, system has been configured. Now, what I always do is click download again. Oh, it's too soon. Needs to let it reset itself. Go back to device list, VE configure. And I'm going to click download again, just double check that all the settings have taken. You don't have to go right through the, the assistant settings or anything. Just have a quick look, make sure the assistants are in there and make sure that the voltage settings are right on the downloaded file. That means that it has completely programmed it properly. Occasionally, it will just miss something that might be a glitch in the internet or something like that, and it misses a program. So you just want to double check that it's actually done it. So just click on that and it's going to open it again. Okay, so that's come up and we just check. Yes, we've got 3 assistants in there. Let's check the charging voltages and the discharge voltages. Yep, I'm happy with that. So turn it off. That's the inverter programmed. Don't need to upload that again. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into Victron Connect and I'm going to find test, or I might just go, no, I won't search for the device. I'll just scroll down and find test. Test, come on. Might have to maximize that screen. Test, there it is. So I click it. Okay, so that might not be the one that we were looking at. Oh man. There we go. Test Easysolar II. The other test was the Servo GX, which obviously I was testing earlier. So here we go. It's connected now to the Easysolar, and you can see there the charge controller. So the charge controller is the last thing we need to program. It's using a completely different piece of software called Victron Connect, but you just click on that charge controller and it will connect to it. Now, the other way you can do this is actually through Victron Connect on your cell phone using Bluetooth. If the charge controller is Bluetooth enabled, which it is inside all the Easysolars, you can do the same process on your cell phone if you're standing next to it. But this is enabling you to do it remotely. So I'm going to click on settings. I can check here product info, and that will tell me if the firmware is up to date. It says it's up to date. It will actually force you to update the firmware before you get into the settings anyway. The main settings we want to look at are the battery settings. So it's got a rotary switch on it, which will give you several basic defaults, which are not really suitable for many batteries at all. So we're going to go select preset. The first thing I'm going to do is set it to lithium, set some basic settings, and then we have to go in and set the other settings ourselves. So now I've set it to lithium iron phosphate, and see that the voltages are too high for us. So I need to pull that back to 55.8 absorb voltage and 55.8 float, and that suits the Freedom 1 batteries. And you see the little green tick on the left-hand side there? That actually shows you that the charge controller has accepted that program. So we're not now programming a remote file. We're actually logged into the charge controller directly, and every time we make a change, it updates that charge controller straight away. So temperature compensation is disabled by default for lithium. Low temperature cutoff is 5 degrees as a safety. Lithium should never be charged below 0 degrees cell temperature. So that 5 degree temperature is just a bit of a buffer there. And the charger is enabled, obviously. You definitely want that. Don't need expert mode. You can have a look at that if you want to, but that's done. We have now programmed that charge controller, and everything is sorted and ready to go. So I can just shut down Victron Connect. Now I can go to dashboard. Now it's saying it's 100% because it actually doesn't know where it's at because we've just programmed the inverter, and it's in real time. I'm just going to flick the switch off on the inverter now. Turned it off, and we'll see it will soon drop out of real time. Once it realizes it's not communicating to anything. There we go. A few seconds ago it updated. So you can see if something's online or offline. I'll turn it back on again. And that is pretty much it for the basics of setting it up. What you can also do, you should go into settings, users, and then you should add me or any support people that you're dealing with in there, their email address. And when you add them, grant them full control. That is handy, so that allows them to get into the remote console and do the uploads and downloads and firmware updates, etc. Now, what you should also do is set the location of the device. By default, it's not set, so I'm going to set you just type the address in there that some brilliant person told me that you could do that the other day. Make sure you click save, and what will happen there is when you go back to the dashboard, you'll get a nice little weather icon up here telling you whether it's what the weather's like. So that's handy. It's not actually using anything at that stage. It's not using this weather data for any automation or battery charging. That may come in the future, but at the moment it's quite handy to say, hey, look, the PV charger is only doing 10% of its output, but it's overcast at that area, so that's fine. We're happy with that. The advanced tab, you can go in and you can select a device and say, I want to know some details of this device, and then you can scroll down and you'll see charts, and you can scroll into those charts. You can select, was it 2 days you want to see, or is it the last 24 hours, or even the last hour if you've had a fault or something like that. You can also extend these charts. You can drag and drop them and prioritize them if you want to. So there's a lot you can do with charts, and each device you can see what all the different data that's available on each device. You can keep notes, which is a handy thing to do, so you don't forget what you've done on that site, and you can put the date and your name, so you can go back into notes and go, oh, okay, they've been having a few problems with this. It's been overloading, or they've added more panels onto a different device, or whatever. You can add photos of the installation, which is really handy. Take a snapshot of the install, put it up there so when you're supporting your customer, you can say, oh, see that switch to the left of that blue box, and they think you're brilliant because you can remember, but it's actually just a photo. You can also share the site publicly. When I say publicly, it means you don't need a login to get there. So this is a private URL, which means only people with this URL can actually see the site. So you can copy that, and then you don't actually need a login. You don't even need to be set up to view the site. Quite handy if customers are quite not that tech savvy. They don't want to set up an account, but they want to see their information. They can see the basic dashboard by that site. If it was, say, an Airbnb, you could put that link there, and you could, let's say, you could go onto that link, create a QR code, print that QR code out, and they can then scan that with their phone, and they can see the state of charge and the load and all of that. But it's not going to allow them in there to actually do any damage. They can just see it. You can password protect it if you want. And you can hide the location if you want to, which is, some people might want that. You can also offer to show it on the Victron world if you want to show the site off to the whole world. So you can share that. There are alarm logs, notes, settings. I think we've pretty much got that sorted. So that is a really quick, basic overview. Alrighty, enjoy.